All right, I'm going to introduce our guest presenter today, our coach, career coach. Her name again is Anita Adefuye. She just turned on our video. Good to see you today. Anita is currently working as a senior policy analyst with Tourist Saskatchewan. She has experience working across various roles and ministries within the government of Saskatchewan. As a career coach, she empowers racialized groups. When we say racialized groups, we're talking about visible minorities in the society to advance their careers and live fulfilled lives in Canada. So she does this through a company, and she also has a company that is titled Advanced and Fulfilled Coaching. Advanced and Fulfilled Coaching. So Anita also happens to be a founding member of Peculiar Connect. So we're so pleased to have you today, and we just can't wait to, get some tips on career. Even though I've been in this country for about 7 years now, I'm so excited for what you are going to share and what I'm going to learn. And I'm sure we all are, and we will have questions as you progress, pen down in the chat room that we would address when you finish the presentation. I'm going to hand it over to you now, and thank you so much for taking the time to come today.
All right, thank you, Uncle Shagun. Good evening, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're calling from. Joining us from today. My name is Anita, as has been said. So I will be, I have the privilege of walking us through some career tips today. I know it says it's for newcomers, but I do find in the course of my work and dealing with different people that there are people who can be here 5-6 years and they're still struggling in their careers, and so one of the reasons why I decided to, do what I'm doing is because I love to help people succeed. And like, Shagun rightly said, I'm a founding member of Peculiar Connect. And one of the things, it came together, there was the arm that did the pickup and the accommodation, and then the arm that provided information session. And it was just, part of it is just to help people get better at and settle and integrate into the society. So what we're learning today, we can never exhaust this topic in one day. If we could, I wouldn't have a company. There won't be career coaches. There won't be employment settlement centers. But it's all those things are there just to tell you that it's not something that, can be consumed in, exhausted in one day. But the best we can do today, we'll cover. And this is designed in a way that would help you drive with questions that you want to ask as well. So we'll talk about some stuff, but we'll also make sure that this is well driven by questions, and you can ask specific questions that you have, and we'll provide some answers, God willing. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to just jump right into it. Like Shagun had said, if you have any questions, feel free to just drop them in the chat box. There'll be opportunity to ask questions as we go along. Oops. Okay, I can't share my screen.
Can you try now?
There we go. Yes, it's good now. And I'm hoping that everyone can see that.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so welcome to this information session. As you're aware, this was put together by Peculiar Peoples Parish of the Redeemed Christian Church of God, right here in Regina, Canada. And this is a unit that is dedicated to welcoming newcomers and helping you transition, but much more than that, it also helps you with providing information that are needed per time. So yeah, So I don't know if you can just let me know in the chat box if you're already in Canada or you are yet to arrive. Can we just quickly know? We'd just like to get a sense of. I can see some people and I know you're in Canada, uh, but if you're yet to arrive, let's just know very quickly. I can't see who is saying what, so I'll rely on you, Shegun, to just help me per time to figure out who is where. Okay. So what we're going to be talking about today and what you can expect, we're going to go over some tips on how, just some general things to guide your overall living in Canada, and just even in your career. And we're also going to talk about navigating and understanding the Canadian job market. So some things to look out for. We're also going to look at what you need, how you determine if you need to career pivot. Some of us might actually need to pivot careers, meaning you're going to have to change your field. All right. And then we're also going to look at how you grow your network, what you need to do. I'm going to have conversations around all of those things. So that's what you can expect today. But before we go into all of that, I just want to quickly share a little bit about myself, my story. You already know my name, Anita. I arrived.
Sorry, I think
You're muted.
You're muted. I think I pressed something. Can you please unmute yourself? Sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay. All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's good now.
And you can still see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't know how much we lost, but I'm just going to, start from here again. So I was saying that I arrived Canada 2015 of March 2015. And at the time, I was working with the Nigerian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I was a diplomat. And so, like many of you or some of you, it was my dream job at the time. Quite frankly, it was what I always wanted to do. Even as a child, I talked about it a lot. But then I decided to stay back here a little bit and test the waters to see what kind of jobs I could get if I chose to stay back, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to be here. And so I stayed back and I was trying to apply for positions, and boy, I was really shocked. Nothing was happening. I was getting interviews, quite frankly, which told me that the problem was not my resume, but I wasn't getting any of the jobs. And I'll walk away feeling like, wow, that was a very great interview. Everybody was smiling, they were happy, at least they looked happy, but I never got anything. And if you're already here and you've been in that place, you probably can relate to this, where the more you keep applying and not getting any yes, the more your confidence starts to erode, and eventually I settled for my very first job here in Canada, as a McDonald's team member. Don't let the fancy name fool you. I was cleaning tables, I was scrubbing floors, I was washing toilets and doing all of that. I was, like it was horrible. And one of my very first aggressive racial slurs was right on this job. So it was a lot. But I'm not going to go into the details of all the other jobs I've worked since then. I'm just going to jump into what I do today. And today I'm a senior policy analyst with the Government of Saskatchewan's Crown Corporation called Tourism Saskatchewan. And it's similar to what I do as a diplomat. The only difference is that I was focused on foreign policy, and this is focused on just generic policies, which is great. And I've worked at different ministries and different organizations in different portfolios: energy policy, mineral taxation policy, and now I'm with tourism, dealing with tourism policies and all of that. So I'm also the CEO and founder of my company, Advanced and Full Coaching Company. Like it was mentioned, the things that I learned over the course of the year is what I'm now teaching to people to help them, bypass all of the things that some of us went through. right? And that is important because I believe in the fact that, you don't have to make the same mistakes that someone else has made. If it took me 5 years, I want to see it take you 5 months max. If it took somebody else 5 months, it can take you 5 days. And these are all things that, different people have experienced. So I also mentor and coach at the Peculiar Peoples Parish. I work with teenagers, and it's one of the best and fulfilling jobs that I can ever ask for. And I'm also a writer. So some of you may have read some of my articles on LinkedIn or on my passion projects on my website at lawalternances.org. But the most important thing that I do, that I enjoy the most, is being a wife to my husband, being a mother to my children, and I'm a lover of Jesus. My faith is very central to who I am, my identity, and I carry it wherever I go, and I wear it like a badge because I'm proud of who I am as a child of God. So if you're not a Christian, it's okay. This is open to even non-Christians as well. Anybody can benefit, but this is part of who I am. All right, so let's jump right in now that we know each other, or at least you know me, and you have a good sense of where I'm coming from, what my journey has been. I didn't just arrive and then voila, I got a job, and then but there are processes that I've had to learn. There are things that I've had to understand along the way. And so I just want to give you a general rule of thumb, that will guide your posture in this country. And the reason I'm talking about this is because I see a lot of people, get into trouble for things that on a normal day shouldn't look like a big deal, but it is a big deal. And this is important because you're coming from a culture, and you're coming to a new culture. If you don't understand the modus operandi of the new culture, you'll find yourself in a lot of trouble. And in sometimes dealing with either clients or in platforms like this, or even people who just randomly reach out to me on LinkedIn, I get to hear a lot of stories that it's really heartbreaking and could have been avoided. And so just think of this as something to guide you, not just even for your career, but for any and everything else that you're going to be doing as you transition into a new country, or whatever that country might be, even if it's not Canada. So the first thing I want to talk about is be open-minded. Be open-minded. Keep an open mind. An open mind to learning. Keep an open mind to, processes and things that you may not be familiar with. All right. If you're not open-minded, then your eyes will be closed to opportunities that can, that are there for you. All right. Same people, just be so close-minded to the changes, to the reality of the changes that is before them, and it hasn't helped them go far in life in this country. All right, this is a land of opportunity, it is true, but if you don't know where the opportunities are, chances are you're having a closed mind, and that's why. So to see the opportunities, open up your mind. Number 2, be ready to pay the price. Whatever you find out that you need to do, in fact, you'll pay the price in one way or another, whether it's in sitting down to customize resumes, or it's in having to go back to school, or it's in having to, go out of your comfort zone. Some of us, you might need to talk to people, and you would say, oh, I don't like talking to people. You'll have to pay the price. Whatever price you determine you need to pay, please, when that time comes, pay the price. So keep an open mind and be ready to pay whatever price that you need to pay. Number 3, realize that everyone's journey is going to be different. I remember particularly working as an administrative assistant at some point, and someone had randomly reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, I'm coming to Canada. I need help in my career. Can you help me, walk me through some things? I helped this person, did everything with them, went through their resumes, answered some questions that they had, told them, how to go about some processes, gave some tips. And this person got a job before leaving Nigeria. And not just any job, a very good job. They're still on that job 4 years in. 4 years in, the person is still on that job. Very good job. And I was an admin assistant. Now, what did I feel bad? A little bit I did, to be honest, because it meant that my system was working for this person, but wasn't working for me, but I understood one thing. That person's journey is different from my journey. And quite frankly, I'm grateful for the journey that I have. The only reason, I understand certain things better is because I went through my journey. There are some people whose journey is they come in here, 2 weeks later, they get a job. And it's the job that they need, that they want, and voila, they have it, moving on. All right. It might not be your story. So keep an open mind again, prepare to pay the price, even if it means that your journey might seem a little longer than some other people's journey. Our realities are also different. So be flexible. Now, why I'm talking about flexibility, and I'll paint a picture for you, a scenario for you of something that happened with someone that I was talking to. So I was talking to a client once, and the person was talking about how, I want this job, and they told me the job title that they wanted. And I said, well, okay. And so I found a job, and I sent it to the person. I said, look at this job. It sounds like what you're looking for. 2 things. Number one, they looked at the job title, and then they looked at the job type. It was a temporary position. It was a title that didn't sound like what they were looking for. And the person just said, no, I'm not interested. I can't do temporary job. This is that. And I was like, no, read the job description. And then as we're reading the job description, I started shouting, that's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. Yes, that's what I do. Yes, that's what I like. And I'm like, see, and you'd have just passed on an opportunity because 2 things. 1, you have a closed mind, and 2, you're not being flexible. Because it doesn't carry the job title you're looking for does not mean that it's not what you're looking for. So learn to be flexible, know where and when to be flexible. Do not lose a sense of who you are. Now, one of the things that make me proudly wear my badge as a Christian, I don't go around telling everybody that cares, listen, I'm a Christian. But 2 things. 1, I stopped doing straight hair, like straight weave hair, and, ladies would understand, but it wasn't because I didn't want to. But 2 things. 1, it's hard to maintain. It's harder to maintain than braids, but braids reflect more of my culture, my person. And, I don't get shy at work about eating my lunch in the office in a common area if I have to. I don't get shy about that. Unless I don't want to answer questions, then you see me avoid people when I'm trying to warm up my food. But I've heard people say they don't eat their lunch in common areas because they are worried about people who say, oh, your food stinks, or this or that, or they're worried about upsetting people. When you keep adjusting yourself to the point where you become one with the system, you stand the chance of losing a sense of who you are. And there is no way you'll be fulfilled in this land if you can't have a sense of who you are. Whatever, I'm Canadian already. I have my citizenship, but I'm first of all still a Nigerian. I'm a Nigerian Canadian, and I acknowledge that. I will not throw out my Nigerian just to be more Canadian. And I will not try to be, and I will not, stay stuck up on being so Nigerian that I won't even give myself an opportunity to be Canadian, at least to some degree, right? So understand who you are and try and protect who you are as a person. People are frustrated, not because of anything sometimes, but because they don't know who they are anymore. And I've had cases of people who tell me things like, I kept adjusting to the system and now I don't even have a sense of who I am anymore, what I want or what I like. So very key, don't lose a sense of who you are. And finally, treat everyone with respect. Some of us are coming from a culture where there's hierarchy. And not just hierarchy, but also, there's social stratas. And the CEO does not get seen. My CEO's office currently is just beside my office. And sometimes he walks past and he's like, hey, Anne, how you doing? And we talk. Sometimes I can walk into his office, and he likes to learn. So he's always asking me tons of questions about Nigeria, about culture and all of that. That's the kind of experience that people have here. Some of us are coming from experiences where that's not the reality. The way we don't mingle with the receptionist, we don't mingle with the admin assistants. Yeah, that might backfire here. And, one thing that happened once, I walked into an elevator and someone else walks in. And I said, hey, good morning, how are you today? And the guy said, oh, I'm good, I'm great, thanks. And you? I said, good. And then as we're talking, we're just gisting. And then he said, oh, can you hit 15 for me? He was going to the 15th floor. I was going to the 4th floor. It was my first day on that job, I remember. And then I got to the foot, and then he said, "Is this your first?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, what's your name?" I told him we chatted. It was good. He was like, "Yeah, I'm sure you'll enjoy it." And I'm like, "Yeah, sorry, I didn't catch your name." And then he told me his name, and it turned out that was my DM, deputy minister. That's like the number one person within the ministry. And I was like, "Oh my God, oh, hi." And he was like, "Yeah, it's okay. You don't have to." That's how much you just never know who you're talking to. People don't, carry those things on their heads. And you just don't know when you walk into, maybe it's an interview, and the person you just talked to rudely because you saw them cleaning the table when you were walking in, is probably your interviewer. So be warned, be guided, treat everyone with respect. These are foundational stuff that you need to think about. So I'm going to paint the picture of what most people do in their careers when they come. And that is somewhat even reflected in the numbers that we have today. That is somewhat reflected in the numbers that we have today. So I see right now that we're 29 people, right? If I were to say, let's say we are talked about, or want to talk about, I don't know, and I don't know what topic, excites people, but there'll probably be more crowd than this. But then we talk about career, there's very few numbers. And I watch this, and it happens a lot. People engage employment services pre-arrival for things like accommodation. They engage for things like transportation. Oh, well, my kids go to school. And all important stuff, very important, very key, very vital. But not a lot of people prepare for their career beforehand. And that is the singular most, greatest mistake that people start to do. And so they do all of this preparation. They get where they'll stay. They get a car. They do all of that. They put their kids in school, and then they arrive, and then it's like, okay, let's get going. What do I need for a career? And then they start applying. They are sending resumes here and there. They are just applying for any and everything that comes. And then nothing is coming forth, and they're wondering, okay, what's going on? And then confidence level starts to drop, and somebody comes and tells them, oh, there's money in nursing, go and do nursing. Now they're considering nursing, and someone else comes and says, oh, no, all you just need is a data analytics certificate. They jump into that one, and someone else comes and says, no, there's grants, go and collect money and go to school. And then they're all over the place. And at the end of the day, I've seen people spend 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and nothing to show. Now, for some other people, a very minute few, they come in, they get they apply for their jobs, they get it, they move on. For some other people, they come in, they get survival jobs, and that's another thing, they just get a job. Some other people will be like, oh, let me just get any job just to pay the bills and get going. And 2 years later, they are still stuck on that job. They don't even know how to get out anymore. In fact, they don't even know what skills they have anymore. So this is what I find that most people do. And it's not helpful. Some people can relate to this. Some others might not be able to. Others would even know that, okay, I probably need to go back to school or do whatever. And then you're like, but I don't want to do that. And so you see all kinds of things that people do. But overall, if you're going to succeed, there's a better way to go about things. It doesn't have to be your story. You can succeed in a much fewer time. You can plan your career before you even arrive if you haven't arrived here already. And if you have and you feel like, well, I've already spent 3 years and I have nothing to show for it, it's okay. There's still hope. All right. And that's part of what we're going to go over today. And so if you're going to succeed in your career as a newcomer, as a visible minority, as a new immigrant here in Canada, there are some questions that you need to sit down and ask yourself. There are some questions that you need to sit down and ask yourself. And some of those questions is what we're going to go over today. The first question that you'll need to ask yourself is, what is my career goal? And I'll be using example of how I navigated this in my career, and how maybe I've also helped some of my clients navigate this. What is your career goal? What is your career vision? If you recall, I had said that when I was moving here, I had my dream job, or so I thought, right? I had my dream job. I had what I wanted. But I got here, and by the time I started thinking about what I wanted for my vision, what I wanted for my career goals and all of that, I started to realize, so many things. one of the first things that I realized is that career is not linear. And I want to leave that with you. Career is not linear. Put that at your back pocket, because it will come up a lot as we go along. Career is not linear. And so as I started to envision what I wanted for my career and understanding that the career is not linear, I realized that I needed to create pathways for myself. Now, by the time you ask the question of what your career vision or goal is, it brings you to the next question of, are you in the right field? Now, think of your transitioning to Canada as an opportunity for a clean slate. They give you a blank career slate and say maybe, Shegun, this is a blank slate. You have an opportunity to start again. What would you feel in this blank slate as your ideal career? What would you feel in this blank slate as what you really want to do? Now, why is this important that you ask? I'm from Nigeria, and I see that most people here from the names are from Nigeria. The reality there is you finish school. In fact, so many people, the courses you studied at school is not even what you wanted to begin with. And then on top of that, you come out of school, you can't even get a job in that field. And so you see engineers who are bankers. You see engineers who are human resource managers. You see accountants who are admin assistants. So you see all of those kind of mismatch. And some people just got the first job they got, not because of anything, but because, well, it's what's available. Now you have an opportunity to rewrite that story. Are you going to continue in that path, or are you going to do something else? That's why it's important that you're asking, you're doing your career visioning. And so when you ask that question, it will tell you whether or not you're in the right career field that you want to be or that you need to be. Now, whatever you find as the answer to the first two questions, if it is yes, I'm in the right career field. The next, if the answer to number 1 and 2 is not clear, it has to be clear to you, or at least you have to have a general sense of idea of where it's headed. Now, the example for me was that I couldn't get into Global Affairs Canada because I, first of all, even have to be a citizen. So even if all of my qualifications checked out, I still have to be a citizen first because of the characteristics of the job that is. Now, that being said, I at least knew something, which was, for me, as long as I'm doing policy and I'm working for government, I'm happy. Even if I'm not working for a government, as long as I'm doing policy that has some form of government relations, I'm happy, right? And so even though it wasn't verbatim, there was that idea of where I'm headed. It's still there. And I'm still working towards it. I'm not there yet, but I'm still working towards it. And I'm not confused every day when I wake up, is this really what I want to do? There will be moments for those questions, but it's not like the norm, right? And so when you answer, if you can't answer the first two confidently, then maybe you and I need to have a conversation. All right. So when you answer that question of, if you're in the right field or not, and the answer is yes, the next question you need to ask yourself, is that profession regulated in Canada? You don't want to know how many times it aches my heart that I see someone coming and they're saying, oh, I'm an engineer, I'm an accountant. And then I ask the question, okay, so where are you in your license, in attaining your license as an engineer? Or I hear things like, and they look at me blank. Or I hear things like, I did not know that my profession was regulated before I got to Canada. If I had known, it blows my mind because it seems like it's something everybody should know. Unfortunately, not a lot of people know. And you can find out that information. I'll quickly just drop the link for, if you're in Saskatchewan, where you find the information in any province within Canada differs. If you're in Saskatchewan, you want to go here. I just shared the link on the chat box there to figure out if your profession is licensed, if your profession is regulated. Because if it is, then you're probably going to be having a whole different conversation, and we're going to talk about that as we go along. Now, Whatever your profession is, if it's not regulated, then you want to ask the question, is your job description and requirements universal? IT, and by IT, I mean information technology, is information technology anywhere in the world. Project management, there is one licensing body and it's universalized. Engineering is not, engineering in Nigeria, for instance, is not engineering in Canada, because processes differ, structures differ, standards differ. Medicine, it's not the same. And so you begin to even see, some of those distinctions that occur. And people don't sit down and ask themselves those questions. And these things not answering these questions for yourself can be roadblocks for you in your career. If your job description is universal, all well and good. So for instance, like the guy that I was talking about that, while I was an admin assistant and I helped and he got a job, he was in IT, supply chain management, and by the time he did some of their, I think he had some of the courses certifications that he needed for that position. He had the right experience. And so it was easy. It was a straightforward thing. And there will be some positions and jobs like that. It's just going to be straightforward. If you're a customer service representative, you're a customer service representative. If you now choose to go on and get additional education or certification, it's discretionary and maybe just to increase your chances. But then there might not be requirements in that sense. So if your job is universal, then the next step really is start applying for jobs. But we'll talk about what that looks like as well as we go on. If your job description is not universal, then you want to know, what are the different components to it? Which then will bring you to the next question of, if, for instance, your job is regulated, meaning that you might not be able to practice in that field right away. And regulated means that you're required by law to get a certification before you can practice that profession. So if you're a teacher, no matter how many donkey years of teaching experience you have, no matter how great the school was, you need to get your certification here in Saskatchewan, and it differs from province to province. If you're a nurse, you're a doctor, you need to get those certifications, you need to write your license exams and whatnot. Now, if those are your situation and you can't practice in your field right away, what you then want to do is create career pathways for yourself. And what that simply means is, while I can't practice as an engineer right now, but I would love to continue being an engineer, what kind of job can I do in the meantime that positions me to get the skills that I need to function as an engineer when the opportunity comes, when the time comes, and at the same time keeps me abreast of what's going on and puts me in the right place, skill-wise, experience-wise, and I won't be frustrated. So you want to create and understand what those pathways are. For some people, it might be that as you begin to do what I call a skill mapping and skill pooling, as you begin to do that, you realize that, okay, I have skill sets to go into project management in the meantime. I have skill sets to maybe go into, to be an educational assistant in the meantime, if you're going into teaching. I have skill sets to maybe go into customer service in banking in the meantime, pending when I become a financial service representative. You begin to have those different pathways and you're strategic. Now, this is very important because if a lot of people were doing this, you will, even when they take survival jobs, you won't get stuck in it. People get stuck a lot in survival jobs, and survival job does not mean it has to be a menial job. No, it doesn't. But people can get stuck and they wake up 5 years later, or people just take anyhow jobs in the name of survival jobs. And then you break your back, you're frustrated. You don't even have the chance to plan yourself for your real career anymore. All right, so that's why this is important. And as you're creating these pathways, some of the questions you're asking is, do I require certification? Do I require training? Do I require additional education? Now, back to my own experience, when I realized, okay, I want to be in government. One of the things that when I was doing this for myself, one of the things that I realized was when you if you want to go into government as a policy analyst, you're going to need a master's degree. And so I did not go and spend money doing a 4-year degree, wasting my time, wasting my energy, wasting my money. I understood what exactly I needed, and I understood how that fits into my end goal, or at least my overall career vision. I saw right where that plugged in, and I made my plans, and I worked towards my master's, and I got my master's, and I got into government straight. And so I didn't waste time, taking courses that I wouldn't need. A lot of people are taking certifications that they don't need. When I first came here, the buzzword then was nursing. Now the buzzword is data analytics and scientists. I don't know what the buzzword will be tomorrow. But one thing I should even quickly tell you is it's good to have those certifications if you need them. If you need them. So my husband is in IT. He's a network analyst. And IT is quite universal. But when he was going to apply for his current position where he's in, at the time they had said that he required a certification, CCNA or CCNP, one of those things, CC something. And he had it, but it was expired. However, he still got hired on that job with the expired CCNA, CCNP, whatever, right? Now, why I'm bringing this up is I know many of us think it's about the certification. But if you have 10 certifications and it does not translate into any real skill transference, forget it. What they need to see is, can you transfer the skills? If we put you on the job, can you deliver? And the answer to that, only you know. Do you have the experience? So it's good to have the certification, but make sure it's the right certification that you actually need. It's good to have the additional education, but make sure it's education that you actually need. I was having a conversation with someone who one time started a daycare, and she kept dragging it out, and I said, hey, come on, what's going on with you and this daycare? She said, oh, I have to get my ECE certification first. And I said, no, you didn't need to. She didn't know that. So she could have started her daycare business 2 years earlier, but didn't start because she thought she needed ECE certification first. And she didn't know that, right? So, however, if she was going to work at a daycare facility, depending on what level she's even going in at, she might not, she might need maybe an ECE 1, but she didn't have to spend, all that time in school, dragging out her chances and opportunities going to school when she could have been doing something else. So understand what you need before you go and pay for any certification, training, or education. And then the next thing you want to ask is, what skill sets do you require? Soft skills, hard skills. We're a combination of how you understand the last points, the education you need, the training you need, the certification you need, the skill set you need. One thing I tell people to do is go through job descriptions. So if you're looking to be a project manager, if that's what you're looking to do when you get here or while you're here, look through as many projects and look at variations of the titles too. Project coordinator, project manager, project supervisor, project, whatever. Look through all of those job descriptions. Note the skill sets that you're asking for. If you're going to be a director, I currently have my eyes set on executive leadership already. And as I'm already mapping out what kind of things are they asking for? What kind of things are they looking for? And as you're doing that, it will help you identify two things. One, it will help you know what skills you have. And that is very important because your confidence to be able to show up at an interview and slay is very dependent on you knowing, like you know your name, that you have the skill sets, you have the experience that they're looking for. And then two, it will open your eyes to know where your blind spots are. If your blind spots is that, for instance, I know one of my blind spots. One of it, especially with regards to policy, for instance, is I need a deeper experience with community engagement. And I'm working on things to close that gap. And so if you don't know where your blind spots are, you keep hitting a roadblock and you'll be wondering what's going on. And you have to be true to yourself about that. And so as you're understanding the skill sets you're requiring, begin to pull them together. It will also help with your resume and make it easier for you. Pull your skill sets that you require, do your mapping, know what you'll need, and then begin to check off the ones that you have. And then look at the trends in your career field. Some people, I was looking at Saskatchewan Job Outlook for labor demands. And I was looking at jobs that will be available over the next, between, I think it was mapped out from 2019 or 2018 to 2023. And I was looking at what areas of job will be opening. Oh, and by the way, for those of you who might not be coming in on SIMP or anything, those kind of information is very good for you to determine. If you're coming in on a federal program, it's very good for you to determine what kind of province to go to. Because if you're, for instance, and I was looking at that and I laughed at something, because I saw petroleum engineers and it was minus something. So meaning that even those that are currently there are likely to be losing the jobs anytime soon. That's what that means, So you want to understand, what are the trends saying? Because even in understanding the trends, you also know part of your skill gap and blind sides that you need to close. So understand those trends and outlook in your chosen field. In fact, some of you, by the time you understand the trends that are going on in your chosen field, you may realize that you need to pivot your career and look at something else. And then finally, what kind of life do I want? So when I started taking my career transition seriously and putting in some steps and plans to help myself get to where I needed to be, one of the things that I asked myself was, how much money do I want to earn on my career? It's very important. We don't think about it. Look, passion is good. I'm a very passionate person. I have passion projects. I have things that I do that I don't get paid for. I don't get paid for my time here right now. I have things that I do that I don't get paid for, but it's my passion. I love to do them, but passion won't put food on the table. Passion won't pay the bills. And that's a sad reality. It won't pay the bills. Passion by itself won't. Passion with solid plan, to implement, to bring in money, will put food on the table, will pay the bills. And so, for instance, if you say, oh, I want to be a teacher and that's what I want to do. That's what my career goal is. I want to be a teacher, period. But then you're also saying, I want a 6-figure income in my career. I mean, there's a disconnect there. Because the truth is, we all know teachers don't get paid 6-figure income. They don't. Right? So what that tells me is that you're likely having to think of something outside of teaching, or think of how you position yourself in a way that you're able to make that income, but you can still teach. Or maybe let's say you, because I know, like for me, for instance, one of the things that I wanted in I don't like, I'm someone who likes to plan myself ahead. And so anything that won't give me that flexibility, I avoid it. And one of the things, and I also love, volunteering at my church. I love volunteering in my community. I was sitting on the board of my kids' daycare. And so I like to give myself opportunity to do those things. I work with teenagers. Teenagers they can call you at any time. They just call you. It's how they do, and I like to keep some flexibility to be there for them if they call, if they need me. And so I quickly understood that things like shift work, it won't work for me. It won't, given the kind of lifestyle that I wanted. I want defined hours. For instance, when I worked at McDonald's, I didn't mind the hours. It was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. I didn't mind it because it was consistent. So even though I didn't really like the consistent odd hours of working, I still didn't mind it because it gave me some stability in terms of, and I could plan myself around that timing. But you see, some people say, I think I was talking to one of my nursing friends, and she was getting frustrated about, I don't like the fact that, they just change our schedules anyhow. And I'm thinking, but it comes with a job though. Didn't you know before you went and studied nursing? Right? And so those are the little things that people don't ask themselves those questions. If you're a mom and you say, I want to be there for my children, I want to be at home in the evening as they're getting back, then, maybe you should be thinking about a different kind of career field than where you are. I'm currently in an out of scope position. It's stretching for me. And out of scope means that they'll tell you hours are undefined and they can call you into work. If I work overtime, I don't get paid. I've worked overtime almost every day in the last 3 weeks at the very least. On Thursday, I didn't get home until about 10 p.m. Nobody's going to pay me for those extra hours. And one of the questions that I asked myself is, okay, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to do. I know what I need to do to get to that place within this time frame. And I have my timelines that I'm working with, and God helping me, I'll get there. And one of the things that I discovered was this. And there are so many times I keep asking myself, do you just maybe want to consider going back in school where you're getting 1 day off every 2 weeks, and then you can have more time to play around with, where that you're working 8 to 5, end of story. If anybody makes you work any extra hours, they have to pay you for that time, but it won't help me get to where I know I want to get to. And it's not as quickly as I'm hoping to get, right? And so there are those questions that you have to ask and synchronize it with your personal life. If it's not going to plug in together, it won't. Now, another thing too is, if you're going to be in a regulated profession, where this would help you is you will need time, especially if you want to get back in your profession. You will need time to go to classes. You will need time to study. You will need time to study for your exams and write your license and write your license exams. Now, if you're in a job where by the time you're done, they have used you and you can't even breathe anymore, how are you going to find the time to sit down and do your studies? And so these are the questions that people don't ask themselves. What kind of schedule do you want? If you're not asking those questions to help you guide your career, you'll just be here, there, and everywhere. You'll apply to all jobs that there are. And before you know it, every employer already knows your name and your resume. And once they see the name, they just put it aside and be like, this person is not a serious human being. So this, if this is all you have today, trust me, you're good. If this is all you have today, you're good. But it's not all. But these are things that you really need to use as a guide to your transition, especially before you arrive. If you can tick off some of the answers on this, you'll do yourself a world of good pre-arrival. All right, so now, when you've asked all of those questions, then you're ready to navigate the Canadian job market. And the first thing that you need to do is be prepared. Prepared, know what your vision is, get clear on where you want to go, know what you need to do, know where your gaps are, and how to cover those gaps. So what you need: career vision, career planning, set tangible goals for yourself, and then be prepared to do whatever it takes to close up all the gaps to where you need to go. In the words of Jesus to the person who was going to betray him, he said, that which you must do it quickly. And now that is to betrayal and to death. And if this is to your own benefit and to your growth, that which you must do, let me borrow those words. I'm telling you, be prepared to do it and do it quickly. All right, so tackle them as soon as you can. Then, what do employers want? Quickly tell me in the chat box, what have you heard about Canadian jobs? What are I know some of the things that I heard. Some of the things that I have heard is, you can't get federal jobs if you're not a citizen. There are some you truly can't get, to be fair. There are some that no questions asked. Nobody will give you if you're not. I've heard things like you can't get jobs if you can't get federal jobs. Some of you have probably heard things like you have to. Yes, they like to see that you volunteer. Good, thank you. You have to, self-starter. You have to be a self-starter. Yep. Oh, another one I've heard, everything is DIY, do it yourself. Everything is DIY, do it yourself. That's another thing that I've heard. There's different things that we've all probably heard. Oh, and another good one is you have to, if you don't know anybody, you can't get jobs or something like that. You have to know people to get jobs. Some of it can be true. Some of it, it's just okay. And some of it is very contextual, whatever you've heard. I was talking to one of my colleagues, and you can get called for an interview. I saw one. You need Canadian experience. You can't get called for an interview with your native name. Great. We'll look at some of all these things and we'll know which ones are true. We'll know how you navigate some of them. We'll know, what you can do. There's always a way around it. One thing I tell people is one of the things I love about Canada that I've come to realize is that there are laws, but there are loopholes to the laws. It's almost like they intentionally work those loopholes into those laws. So you understand the laws, you understand the system, you understand the process, then you find the loopholes and make it work to your advantage. That's how it rolls. You find those loopholes and you make it work. The process is there. Follow it, it will work. Now, again, but bearing in mind some of those things we've talked about earlier about understanding that your own journey might be different from the next person, even when it's in the exact same situation, right? And understanding that, you need to also give yourself the time that you need to get to where you need to get to. All right, so what employers want, for instance, let's start with Canadian experience. When they say Canadian experience, what are they really talking about? What they mean in those instances is, do you understand? They're not even looking for hard skills, honestly speaking, they're not. Has someone taken a chance on you? Do you understand how the system works here in terms of job? So I know that I had heard some comments about, there was a conversation I was having with someone that I said, you know what, I've heard this a lot from not just you, but from a lot of people. And I committed to saying, I'll do a webinar or training on navigating workplace culture. The reason I want to do that, that webinar is because, like I said, I've heard a lot of people talk about things like, this happened and then I said this and I got into trouble. And I'm thinking, oh my God, why didn't you say something before? And sadly, I've seen people also lose their jobs on just some of those things. And so when they say Canadian experience, it's not even so much about the skill sets. It's about understanding the system. It's about knowing that you get paid every 2 weeks and you're okay with that. It's about understanding that when you make a commitment to certain things, you've made that commitment, and here people take you at your word on things. So if you're not serious about something, don't just say carelessly. If you say, I will get that report to you by tomorrow, they mean tomorrow. There's no African time. If you say, I'll show up at 6 p.m., it means you're there at 6 p.m. So there are things that they're looking for. They're looking for, overall, they're looking for someone who has been taking a chance on. And here's the thing, present yourself right. Anybody will be happy to be the ones to take that chance on you. That's just the truth. I know one of my jobs that I got, last, okay, by the way, I should say this, I have, over the pandemic from last year, I'm on my 3rd job. And the second one, or the first one now, I remember when I got hired in that position, there were 3 of us that were hired. And one of them had only been in the country for about 3 months. And this was a government position. And you hear things like, oh, government don't hire people that are brand new. It's not true. They do. They can. All right. And they can. Again, that it didn't work for numbers A to R does not mean it won't work for numbers S to Z. All right. So, and so that's for someone like that, he got the job, right off the bat. So just a couple months in. But one of the things that I know that they're looking for is that someone took that chance on you. And that when they've taken that chance on you, you understand how the system works. And when you understand how the system works, you're able to present yourself in a way that translates your experiences and your skills to what they're looking for. And so, for instance, and that brings us to the next thing, which is personal branding. And that's your resume, your cover letters, and how you show up at interviews. When you know that, okay, in this industry, this is the language they use. I've reviewed resumes where sometimes I'm like, that explains a lot. Not because they didn't have the skill sets, but presentation mattered. How they were showing off the skills mattered. Now, and this is why I said do a skill pooling. Remember, we talked about that earlier. By the time you know the kind of skills that they are looking for, you're reading through different job descriptions, you see the different things that they're asking for. You're taking note of those things. You want to now go back into your own experience. Go as far back as you can and dig out, including volunteer experiences. Yes, including your volunteer experiences, and then begin to map out some of the skills that you have exhibited or used in either in the near past or in time past, right? And you begin to match up the ones that you have versus the ones that they need on your resume. You take those things that are needed and then you make your customized resume to that job. When you already even know what you want and what areas that you want to focus on, you won't be applying here, there, and everywhere. That idea of applying here, there, and everywhere, it creates overwhelm for people and they might not even realize. It will create stress for you. So if you know, I know one person, as we're talking, she was even good. She had done a lot of her own pre-homework, and I was really impressed with that, I must say. But one of the things that I knew that she knew for sure was I was either going into internal audit or I was going into quality assurance. And I know that quality assurance will give me a segue into internal audit, which is where I'm really headed. And so she was very particular, and she could create that focus to say, this is what I'm looking for, this is where I'm going. And she can sit down and tailor her resume to internal audit, to quality assurance, and then apply and just tweak little things as the job demands. And so when you know what they want, you brand yourself in that manner. Use the right languages. They can't be asking for, they can't be asking you for things like, say, I mean, if you have equivalents, it's okay to talk about your equivalents. So for instance, if they're asking for things like, if you're a BA or you're a PMP, you want to know things like, like visualization tools. What visualization tools do you have? What visualization tools do you know, right? If you're in data management, for instance, you want to have idea of things like, say, SharePoint, right? And you want to know how to navigate that into your resume. You want to be able to sell that into your resume. Some of us have done things that when you're looking at the job description here, at first it looks like I don't have all these skills, but you do. And I'll give you a very good example. So I remember on I remember one position that I had interviewed for, and they had asked a question around like policy development and everything. This was at the very first time when I started trying to do this. They had asked for, policy development and whatnot, and they had asked for processes and everything. The struggle I remember then that I had was that yes, I had done policy development in Nigeria. Yes, I had done foreign policy development. At that time, when I was always struggling with, communicating that at interviews, the problem was I didn't know how to take all that experience, plug it into the languages that they're looking for here, and give it back to them in the way that they would understand. So I remember my CEO and I were having a conversation recently, and then we're talking about this and challenges that immigrants are facing. And he said, I mean, and when I look at resumes, sometimes I want to hire people that are, that are new. But the problem I have is they use all of these languages that, I'm struggling to try and figure out, okay, what does that mean here, right? And so you already put yourself in a disconnect by not making sure that you're aligning yourself in a way that matches what they're looking for. So, and the way you project that is your resume. Your resume becomes then the gateway into them understanding who you are, what you have, and what you know. Same with your cover letter. And then your interview is an opportunity to seal the deal and secure yourself that position. Now, at the interview, one of the things that you want to think about is here, some of the questions that you'll get asked at most interview will be something we call behavioral competencies. You'll see, it will be competency-based, and then it'll also focus on behavioral questions. Now, what that simply means is it's not just what you have done, but how you're going about it and how you're able to sell that story. So for instance, someone who has led 10 projects, and then they're talking to you, and then they tell you, they'll ask you a question like, say, tell us about a time that you struggled with a project or you were not able to complete a project or something like that. What they're really asking, for instance, in that moment is something along the lines of they're testing for your problem solving skills. They're testing for your understanding of how projects work. So they'll never ask you verbatim and say, how does a project work? Or what are the 10 key knowledge areas in project management? Nobody will ask you that. They'll ask it and frame it in a way that is process oriented, such that they'll now watch you plug in all of those things. And so these are some of the things that people don't understand. And they walk into interviews, and I did this too, which was why at the time I was getting all the interviews. I did not know it. And I'll walk out thinking, yes, I blew their minds, but then I did nothing. Right. And I wondered why I struggled. All right. So understand yourself. Now, you always want to close the loop. I encourage people, every interview you walk out from, go back and ask for a feedback. Why is this important? It's important because remember when I talked about knowing your blind sides? If they are willing to give you that feedback, not everybody would be willing to, but for those who are willing to and they give you good feedback, you'll know what you're doing wrong. And I started asking questions like that. Every interview I attend till today, when I attend interviews, I go back and ask, how was it? In fact, sometimes I ask for informational interviews. Sometimes I apply for jobs, not even because I want it, but because I just want to interview to see, what kind of questions do they ask in this place? Right? And so you want to do all of those things because it will go back into your personal story, your personal branding. So key things there, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Now, the next thing is that where are the jobs? This one is very important because it is said that 80% of jobs, only 20% of available jobs are advertised publicly. So which begs the question, where are the remaining 80% jobs? If they're not out there, how do you access them? Right? And so, because think about it, for every data analytics person that comes into Saskatchewan, you're all competing for the how many hundred that the outlook says we're going to have in this province in the next, God knows how many, 2-3 years. You're all competing for that same job. Yet it's only 20% of them that are made public. How do you access the remaining 80%? Now, the answer to that ties very closely into the next point there, which is making the right connections. And when you're making the right connections, you're looking for 4 different areas. 1, people who can refer you for jobs. These are not references. These are people who can say, hey, I know this person. And I'll give you a very good example. So, and I know one of the questions that people ask a lot is, I'm a newcomer, I don't know anybody. How do I get to know people, right? Now, chances are at least one person in Canada. Who here knows at least one person in Canada already? At least one person. At least one person. We all don't, right? Good. At least one person. Now, that one person, how many people do they know? Right? So think about it. Now, I remember talking to someone who had just arrived and she was saying, oh, I'm trying to get a job in banking. I don't know anybody in banking. And, I'm just frustrated. How do I go about this? And I was like, you don't know anybody in banking? Do you know anybody who might know somebody in banking? And she was like, no, I don't. That's the problem. And I said, but you're here talking to me. You know me now. Have you asked me if I have friends in banking? And she was like, oh, no. And I said, well, go ahead and ask me. And she said, do you know anybody in banking? And I said, yes. And I gave her at least like 5 names. And in those 5 names, 3 of them work in different branches of the specific bank that she was applying to. So now, those people might not know the exact hiring manager, but they might know someone within the bank who knows that hiring manager. True or false? True. Now, by the time they now talk to the person, so you begin to see that the confusion there is, it has to be people that you know directly. No. Just last week, I sent somebody, I saw a position that, somebody that I've been talking with, and I said, oh, this position will be great for you. And if you're interested, I know someone who works there. I'm happy to ask them to help you put in the referral. And she was like, oh, okay, thank you. And I said, sure, no problem. And I said, go ahead, apply for the job. Here's the person's name. And I talked to the person and I said, hey, there's someone, I know her. She's a friend, and she needs a job. She's new, she needs a job. Do you mind, allowing her use you as the referral? Now, understanding the referral process, let me quickly even help you understand that. Not every organization has a good referral process. Not every organization. That being said, what referrals help you do is, it's not even 100%, but it might give you a leg in, that at the very least, you'll get an interview or a pre-screening exercise. Another example I'll give you, so someone in Saskatoon, I'm in Regina, someone in Saskatoon needed a job. I don't even know this guy, to be honest with you, I don't know him. He just reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, he's applying for a job at XYZ, and he sees that I have a connection with someone who works there. And I said, okay, great. So I reached out to the person who works there and I said, do you mind putting a referral for this person? She said, well, I don't know. No, yeah, she said, I don't know him. Do you know him? Well, and I said, honestly, I don't know him. So I sent his name out to some contacts and I said, please, who knows this person? And 3 people that I respect came back and said, I know him. We went to school together. He's like this, is like this. Somebody else said, oh, we've worked together before. And I said, okay, fine. So I'm back to and I said, I don't know him personally, to be honest with you, but these are people that I know and they know him. You see the link, see how long that link is. This guy got the job. By the time she put in the referral for him, they gave him an interview. He got the job. So it doesn't have to be someone that you know directly. The only thing is, remember when I said, respect everybody and be nice to people. Because that referral that you need might just be the cleaner that you just talked to really because you saw them cleaning. I worked with someone at McDonald's whose husband is a medical doctor. And the only reason she was working at McDonald's was because she just felt like, she said, I love to feed people. And I mean, I have to at least do something and deceive myself that, I'm bringing something to the table. Her husband was not just a doctor, he was a surgeon. So whatever doctors make, it's times that amount. And even doctors make blood money here. So imagine that. So imagine going in there and saying, oh, she's just a McDonald's staff. Yet tomorrow you go, you take your resume to her husband's office and say, I'm looking for a job. Right? So that's how that works. All right. And you want to pay attention to make sure that you're making those connections. Hiring managers. How do you get in front of hiring managers? Who here would be bold enough to say, I'm contacting a hiring manager to talk to them? Who? Be sincere. Or who would even think about doing it? Let's even start from there. Who would think about doing it? Because not a lot of people do. I did not used to do it until now. Because when you find who the hiring manager is, I was talking to someone and I told her and I said, contact this organization, look for the hiring manager. And most times you know who the hiring manager is. They'll either put it in the job description or they'll put a contact, or you can just phone the company and say, I have some questions. I want to talk to the hiring manager, and all of that, right? So talk to the hiring managers. It's the same way as trying to get a referral. But instead, this time you're right in front of the decision maker. And at the very least, they become part of your network. I remember doing this with one of my clients, and I told her, I said, talk to the hiring manager, and I gave her exact scripts, and I said, this is what you'll see. This is how you frame the question as to why you want to talk to them. And I said, tell them this, tell them this, tell them that. If they say yes and they agree to it, these are some of the questions that you should be asking them in that conversation. And by the time she was done with the person, the person even went as far as saying, let me review your resume to make sure that it's well aligned to what we'll be looking for on the job. Who does that? Now imagine she never went to talk to that person. She would have thrown in that resume like that and it would just get lost in an ATS system. right? So, and today, she and that hiring manager, the hiring manager offered to mentor her, which is the next thing. You want to look for mentors. Mentors don't have to be, I find it very humbling, and it's a privilege when, I work with people who are older than me. But they tell me, you've gone far, you have what I'm looking for, please mentor me. Again, keep an open mind, because you never know. I have mentors. I have mentors who are Africans, who are Blacks, who are non-Nigerians, who are whites, men, women. I have in fact, I always joke about having a mentor for every area of my life. Now I'm in business, I have a business mentor. All right. So, and then finally, you want sponsors. Sponsors, you have to have proven yourself to have a sponsor, because a sponsor will literally see a job, walk to the hiring manager and say, this is my person, and I want you to hire them. Of course, subject to that, you at least meet minimal requirements. All right. So to navigate the job market, prepare yourself, know what you want, be strategic in your application. Don't just apply here, there, and everywhere. When you know what you want, it's easy to also know what employers want within what you want. And then use that information to brand your resume, your cover letters, and then apply for the jobs. Find out where the jobs are. The ones that are not advertised, find out where they are. You know the industry you're in. Go on LinkedIn, look for people who are in those industries. Let them know you're looking for a job. You can't be shy about it. And let them know, I'm looking for opportunities. Go straight to the point. Don't come, I'm doing hello, hi, how are you? Have you eaten today? No. Straight to the point. Hi, good afternoon. My name is XYZ. Arriving in Canada in 2 months. I need help, and I'm trying to just, build my network, and I'm looking for people who are in similar industries. Can you talk to me about what your everyday job looks like? They have a good conversation with you. Oh, I appreciate this. Thank you so much. So say, if there is a position in your organization, would you be kind enough to let me know? I'd be interested in applying. I'm interested in this organization for XYZ reasons. Straight to the point. All right. So make the right connections. Go beyond your ethnic group. Go beyond even your industry. Go beyond, people that look like you. Okay. So I think we went back there. Sorry about that. And then, so as you're navigating the job market and all of that, there are some little foxes that can spoil your vine. And it's important that you deal with those little foxes. Now, I asked a question of, what you think people want. And someone said something about that you can't get a job with your native name. Now, this was a study that was done by the government of Canada. And in that study, they had asked employers if, to talk about, whether or not they pick potential employees, applicants, based on their last names, being English or not, or, well, in this case, it was in Quebec. So it will be Franco-Quebecois last names. If you're outside of Quebec, which is a French-speaking country, it'll be probably maybe English or anything that sounds more Canadian in that sense. Now, it works both ways. Last name, first name, it doesn't matter. I've had and seen and heard of people who did not get jobs, or who don't get called, or who were bypassed because the interviewer or because the hiring manager could not pronounce their names. And I know it's an unfortunate reality, quite frankly. But like I said, when you understand the system and you understand its limitations, the least you can do for yourself is find a way to beat the system for your own benefits. Find a way to beat the system. And so what I recommend, and this is what happens, it means that 62% of people who are applying for jobs are likely to not get picked because of their names. It's an unfortunate reality, but it happens. Same with when they look at where your experiences are. Same with when they look at, where your education is. It's very unfortunate it happens, but there are people who are learning to, come out of that silliness, and they're doing the right thing. So some quick tips then that I recommend overall to help increase your chances as you navigate the Canadian job market is, if you have an English name, use it on your resume, please. Or if you can shorten your name. My husband's full name is Adetola. I mean, it's not hard. But he goes by Tola. I mean, you see Tola. There are two ways you can pronounce that, Tola or Tola. And most times it is Tola to most people. But at least it's close enough. All right. I remember working with a client and I said, change your name. Do you have an English name? Even if it's your middle name, put it in brackets or put it in the front and then put your actual first name in the middle, because you'll still need that. And it doesn't look like you're trying to impersonate or anything, right? And I said, change it. And he came back and said, you won't believe I'm getting more responses now by just that little change. It's sad, but that's the reality. So until you understand how to beat the system completely, do some of, I read about Chimamanda's story and they said that she added Chima, her real name, her parents gave her Amanda, and she added that just to, project her identity, and all of that. And one of the things is until you become a Chimamanda, leave the Chima first, stick with your Amanda. All right. And then the other thing is always run your resumes through resume optimizers. This will help you bypass ATS systems. Lots of places you're applying to, the first person who is seeing your resume is not an individual, it's a system, it's AI. So you want to make sure that you run your resumes through resume optimizers. Target 85%. That puts you at the top percentile. But even if it's not getting to that top, because sometimes I find out with those things, it's just highlighting things that are not even needed or that makes no sense. But if you can't get through that, as high as 85%, it's fine. Don't kill yourself over it. At the end of the day, again, I believe very much in providence as well and divine interventions and some of these things too. Then keep your resume simple and customized. I have seen a 6-page long resume before. I'm not joking you. And I said, dude, they're not looking for all of your career history. They're not looking for the ones that are relevant to them. Again, when you have known what you want and you're keeping your eyes focused on what you want, it makes it easier to keep your resume simple and customized to the job. Update your LinkedIn profile. If you're transitioning, you're looking into to go into a new industry career, you want to keep an updated LinkedIn profile that states your general skill sets that is easily transferable. So don't go and say things like, I work for XYZ company, I mentioned the company's name, if that's your situation. You just want to highlight and say, senior policy analysts, developing public policies, things like that, so that it's easy to tie, again, use the right lingo. It's easy to tie them. When they look at your LinkedIn profile, it's easy for them to tie it to what they are looking for. So update your LinkedIn profile. Please do not lie. Some people lie on their resumes and then you can't defend it. Besides, global referencing is real. If they call a random person to find out, this person said they did this, and then the person is, once they even hesitate, you have lost it. So please don't lie. So we see referrals. We've talked about that earlier. Get in front of the decision maker. If you can find out who the hiring manager is, you want to make sure that you get in front of them. That's how you get ahead of the competition. In fact, sometimes you get there and they tell you, you know what, we might not have this position available for you, but we do have this other position. But then that other position they're telling you about was never even advertised. One of the jobs I got last year, it never made it to public space. I got the job. All right. So you never know. Diversify your references. I see people come here. And so, for instance, someone might choose to volunteer with Peculiar Connect. And then the people that they're using as references is Anita, Emeka, Shegun. It shows red flags. It can't be that all the people that can speak to your skill sets is people who are Nigerians who worked in Peculiar Connect. No, that doesn't speak well. Diversify your references. If you go to school, be good with your lecturers so that you can put them as references. Depending on some things I'm applying for, I might let one of my lecturers know and say, you're my reference for this position. Wherever I go, I make sure that I have good relationships with people, because you never know, I can use them for referencing tomorrow. So keep that diversified. And then, so if you now determine that you need to pivot, we talked about this earlier, I'm just going to run through some quick things that you need to do to determine some quick things that you need to help you determine if you need to pivot your career. Remember I said, see you're coming here as an opportunity for a blank slate. So if you don't currently enjoy what you're doing because it was just a circumstantial job that you got, then maybe you want to think about pivoting into something else and give yourself that opportunity of a fresh start to start again. there was something else that you always wanted to do closely related to the first one, think about pivoting in that instance. If you don't find the cost of continuing your current career here worth it. I've seen people say, I'm not interested in going through all the stress with Apex. It's painful, yada yada. And then they're like, I want to look for something else. And they're really happy changing into that. If that's your situation where you feel like the cost benefits analysis of doing your current job and having to do certifications and all that is not worth it and you're looking for something else, it's all well and good. I've seen people going to more lax professions like photography or something else, a passion project that ties to their job. So whatever works for you. The trend shows that there's not a lot of hope for your current role. I remember talking to someone who wanted to be in Saskatchewan, but then also wanted to be a petroleum engineer. And I said, look, okay, there's not a lot of opportunity. In fact, there's no opportunity here as you'd want to be looking for, and eventually they pivoted into environmental engineering, which, by the way, is part of the future. So you want to look at those trends and what it's saying. Trends might make you know maybe just the kind of skill upgrades you need, but it might also tell you that you need to consider changing career path. And then you want a different lifestyle from what your current role would allow. So I've seen people who have said, I'm a nurse, but if I do nursing, I don't want to have to do, shift hours. I don't want to have to stand for long hours. I'm getting older. I've seen people say, things like that. And then they look for something else, or they go into a different career. All right. I remember talking to someone who was very frustrated about this. And I said, well, have you considered something else? We had some conversations, walked her through all of it, and she ended up becoming a public health official instead. So those are some questions to help guide you to know if you need to pivot. Now, if your profession is regulated, you want to have a conversation with your regulatory body pre-arrival. If you have arrived, it's fine, but still leave all these people you're talking to. Talk to the body directly. Let them tell you what you need. Let them tell you what certifications you need, and let them tell you what you need to close the gaps that they've identified to help you with your license. They'll give you the timelines, they'll give you what you need, they'll give you courses you need. You can now infuse that into your career plan and help yourself move forward. When you have it, you have it in your career plan. Then you want to design a very strategic alternate job for yourself. So even if you're going to take a survival job is not menial job. It is any job you take pending when you get what you truly want, or any job you take to pay the bills in the meantime, pending when you get what you truly want. All right. But you want to be very strategic about it. You don't want to take just any job for any job's sake. Take a job that allows you the time and the space and the peace of mind to prepare yourself to get back into your regulated profession. Take a job that gives you opportunity to build on skills that you'll need for when you get your license in your desired profession. Take a job that gives you opportunity to meet more people within your field, within your industry. Think about it in that area. Volunteer within your association or related organization. While you're going through your certification process, you don't want to lose touch with what's going on in your industry and your current skill set. You don't want to lose that. So bear that in mind. And you can either volunteer with your industry association to keep your skills fresh, or you can apply those skills elsewhere. So I know someone, for instance, who at the time that they had arrived, helped with some human resource planning processes within our church. And also he had also worked elsewhere with Open Door Society, which is kind of like a human resource-based settlement organization. So even though he was in a process of license and certifications and all of that, he was able to keep his skills up to date by being in those places. And yes, those experiences count as Canadian experience. All right. So, and then when you're taking bridge courses, make sure you look for those that have practicum components, co-op components, internship components, because they'll be a segue into getting a job. For me, I could have taken public administration pretty much anywhere, even online, but I chose Johnson Sherema, which is where I had mine, because they have an internship component. That was how I eventually got I eventually got a different opportunity to get into government. The plan was to use that to get into government, but our journeys are different as God will have it. I was able to get into government even before the internship showed up. But the internship also helped. It provided more opportunities too. So if you do all of those things that we've talked about, especially if you do them before arrival, and you set your career vision, you determine, whether your career is regulated, and you start to reach out to understand what you need, you map out your knowledge, your skills, your abilities that you need on the job. You know what your skills are versus what the employers are looking for. You set your career plan, you action your plan, you build your network. As you're doing all of these things, especially as you're doing them before you arrive, I assure you that you'll hit the ground running. Do them right, and some of you might even get your jobs before you even arrive or on arrival. Or you arrive and it's 2 weeks in, you already have your offer letter in your hand. You don't have to go through 5 years. You don't have to go through 2 years. Whatever, even if you have to take certifications and all of that, you can take jobs that in the meantime, it's not frustrating you. You're not waking up every morning, you're grumpy, you're angry, you come back, you're tired, you're frustrated. No, that's not the life that Canada promised you. They promised you that this is a land flowing with milk and honey. It is true. Not literally, but it is good. It is enjoyable, but you need to play your cards right. Okay, so if you want to get in touch with me, these are the channels, but we're at the end of this today, and I hope that this has been helpful to you. I want to believe that people have questions. We're going to take questions and answers now, and please feel free to ask. No question is silly. Please feel free to ask it, and we'll go over it together.
Thank you very much for that in-depth presentation. I've been in this country for a while now. I have a job by the grace of God, but I've learned a lot. Just thinking about some things that I probably need to also do, maybe in terms of mapping, especially I like that passion and income thing. A lot of times passion will just take our time, whereas the time for the actual job that pays the bills is getting affected. We have some questions here in the chat room. We're going to start addressing them one after the other. We have one from Mr. Benga O. He says, you talked about educational grants. How does this grant work? And can we have link to such grants? Thank you.
All right, so yes, educational grants. So you apply for, and I know there's different versions of it. There's grants that are maybe associated for people who are new and are looking to do some bridging courses and all of that. But for me, when I was going into my master's program, I applied for my grant through, and I forget the process, honestly speaking, but I applied for my grant through the Ministry of Education in Saskatchewan, and the grant is not necessarily just grants for grants' sake. Now, there's those that it will give you to augment your course bridging costs. But there's also what I applied for was a loan that came with some amount of grants. So it depends on what you want. But again, and this is where talking to your industry association, regulated or not, is very important, because things change a lot, and they would often have the most up-to-date information to share with you. But for the grants, that will be on Government of Saskatchewan website. I can look it up, but you can also Google it as well, and just look at what's available to newcomers. And when you're talking to the settlement centers as well, like the Regina Open Door Society, or whichever one is available in the province that you're looking to settle, they'll all have one in each province, at least one in each province and major cities around Canada. They would have the most up-to-date information for you on that. So I'd recommend that you look there.
Thanks for that response to the question. There's another question here from Mr. Tola Adefuye. Okay. He's asking, what's the difference between referral and references?
So the reason we're both laughing, for those who might not know, is because that's my husband, and he's probably asking for benefits of people. So the difference really is, Referral is, they just someone who refers you to say, hey, I know this person. In fact, some organizations have such a strong referral process that if someone you refer to them to say, I think this person will be a good fit for this position, right? And they're looking for people, especially places where they have high turnovers. They would have referral systems where if you bring someone in and the person stays for about 3 months on the job, you get paid. They'll give you some money for that. I know CIBC used to do that. I don't know if they still do, but at some point, I know they used to do that, especially with their call center jobs. You bring in someone, the person stays for 3 months or more, they give you $500 for that. So what then now happens is if you know someone, you just let the hiring manager know, I have someone I'd like to refer for this position, right? It just means you know someone at the organization. And I think overall, it looks good on the industry, on the organization, in that it means that especially when it's someone outside of their regular diversity groups, it means that they are trying to expand their diversity and be more inclusive. And so that's what referrals are. So for instance, you can come to me and say, I'm applying to Tourism Saskatchewan. Can you put in a referral for me? I'll talk to the hiring manager and say, oh, someone I know is applying for this position. I'd like to put in a referral for them, and I can maybe just walk them through some of how I know you and all of that. And it's nothing major. References, on the other hand, are people who can speak to your ability to perform on the job. So if I have not worked with you, don't ask me to be your reference. Now, there are some places where they might accept personal reference, but I don't recommend personal reference for jobs, especially when you're even new. I don't recommend it. Because what that means is that you're telling the hiring manager you don't have enough experience to have people who can speak to that experience. That's what you're invariably telling them without saying it in those words. So references are people you've worked with, and it can be on volunteer too. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying diversify it so that it's not only all volunteer. So you worked with Coca-Cola in Nigeria. The person you worked with, your supervisor, they want to talk to the person to see how you performed on the job. You worked with, I used to work with CPA. So for those who are accountants, I'm not an accountant, but I used to work with CPA. I was an admin assistant for them. But even at that, some of those requests for, how do I go about my CPA licensing? They came to me, I'd answer the questions for them and all of that. I worked there. When I talked about my research experience, they called my manager to say, did she really do research? And that one would say, oh, yes, she did. She's strong in research. She did this, she did that, she did that. We were happy. These were the results. They can't speak to it. So that's the difference. Referral is, yeah, there's a job, you should apply. And then you say, oh, I know someone in the organization. Reference, I worked with this person. I know their work ethics. I know what they're capable of producing, and I can speak to that if asked about it. And then you put their names, you put their contact as part of your job application submission. So I hope that helps anyone who might have that question in mind too.
Okay, thank you very much. We still have a couple of questions here. There's a question from Mr. Ernest O. He said, what is the position of employers when they view your LinkedIn profile and see that you are also a CEO of your personal organization? What's your take on this? Is that question clear?
Yes, no, it is clear. It is very clear. And I have my LinkedIn profile also says I'm a CEO. I just updated that just about a couple weeks ago. Now, it depends. So there was a position I was interested in because it had some components or specific competencies that I was looking to fulfill. But I looked at the job description over and over again. And I said, there's conflict of interest with what I currently do for my business. So I reached out to the hiring manager, to the executive director of the organization, and I said, hey, I'm interested in this position, but here are my concerns. Can we have a quick chat about that? So we talked a little bit. She looked at my LinkedIn profile and she said, well, I might not really know. Maybe if you come in for an interview, we can have some, deeper conversation about that. And if if we want to go with you, then we can talk about, how we're setting things up. But the more I thought about it, I figured, you know what, it's fine. And I passed on the position. I didn't eventually apply. So one of the things that you want to ask or think about is conflicts of interest. And that's what they'll be looking for. If they feel or perceive that there'll be conflicts of interest, right, then they may not even consider you, to be honest with you. Now, for those who feel like, I really want this person, I like what they offer, I like what they're doing, but they're not sure, they might give you an opportunity and they'll ask you questions around that. And you get a chance to explain what you do your full disclosure. And, and then if there are any conflicts of interest, that can be talked about if they choose to want to go with you. Some other persons, however, and this is the answer to that question, is that it's relative and it's very individualistic to each hiring manager, quite frankly. Some other persons might see it as, well, if you're running a business, would you have time to still do my work? Right? Now, within my organization, for instance, they know I'm running a business. They know I do lots of things in church, outside of church. They know all of those things, right? My manager knows, she's aware. And so I'm more careful to make sure that I deliver on my job, because the last thing I want is to paint a picture for them where it's like I'm too busy doing my personal stuff that my work is suffering, right? And so when hiring managers look at your LinkedIn profile and they see that, those are some of the questions that they'll be asking. Now, if you know that you're a career coach and you want to work as a human resource manager, for instance, and that's all that you're applying for, and those are the things, then there might be potential conflicts of interest. In such instances, I recommend take out your CEO, just put maybe like an executive director or something, anything that, that takes it away, that puts you away, that takes your person away from the organization that you own, if that makes any sense, right? So that's how I would recommend. But if you now think that there is no, I'm a policy analyst, as far as paid jobs go, I'm looking for policy analyst positions, right? And so if I'm applying to policy analyst positions, but then I'm a career coach, there's no conflict of interest. However, if I go and start working with the Ministry of Immigration, I might have to do some disclosure because there might be potential conflicts of interest there, because they have like training, Uncle Michael will probably know this one better, but they have like training areas and components where there's curriculum content creation and all that for new immigrants, right? And I don't want to seem like, I'm doing all of that. Or if I'm an immigration consultant and I'm working in the Ministry of Immigration, there's conflict there and I have to at least do some disclosure. So when there are those kind of issues, remove your personal self from the organization so that they see it as an entity and not you tied to that organization. I hope that helps the person who asked the question.
Okay, thanks for that response. We still have a couple of questions. We would at some point be prioritizing because we have to wrap this up at 2. We have a question from Chimdi. This is possibly a personal thing, but I'll still state the question. It says, what is your advice for someone who doesn't have any name other than native names, and those names are already short? And there are some comments in the room there, chat box there. Just find ways to adjust. But maybe you can say something quickly to that.
Well, yes. So a lot of, if you have Chinese colleagues, this is where many of them fall under. So Shane, Xin, is short. Shane is Shane, right? Now, for somebody who doesn't know, they might try and pronounce that as Shane. And we're trying to avoid, their names being murdered. It's already short. A lot of Chinese people, what they do is I see someone says, anglicize it. It's true. So for instance, Sheen will probably now tell you that her name is Sandra, right? And she will just put, I had a colleague like that, as a matter of, if I had more than one colleague like that, to be honest with you. And what they do is they'll put their full names and then in brackets, or they'll put it in the first name and then in bracket put their actual native name, no matter how short it is. And then they'll say Sandra in brackets, Shin, and then their last name, whatever, PIN, whatever, right? So that's what I recommend that you do in such instances is find yourself a name that can work. Or I like this example. Okay for OKK. OKK is short, at least to people like elsewhere Nigerians, OKK seems short, but
Hello. We just lost you right there. Sister Anita, we lost you right there. I don't know if you can still hear us. Can folks still hear anything? I'm not hearing anything.